Good morning, everyone. Welcome for our day three Atal sponsored 1 week online faculty development program on cybersecurity analytics. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Vishwanath sir to the participants. Dr. Vishwanath sir did his MTech at IIT Madras and PhD from IISc Bangalore. His PhD thesis won the Best Thesis Award in the Electrical Sciences Division of IISc for the year 2006. He worked as he worked some time for IIT Guwahati and currently Sar is working as an associate professor at IIIT Sri City. Sar has guided 7 PhD students in various machine learning problems. He published several papers in top tier journals and conferences. His research areas include machine learning, data analysis, and algorithms. With this brief introduction, I request Vishwanath sir to take over the session.
Thank you for the introduction. So now I am trying to present my screen. So are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
So let us begin this one. So if you are having any questions, you can stop me in between also. So is there any echo coming in?
No, no, sir. It's fine, sir.
So in this presentation, I am going to give you a brief about linear algebra and probability theory. So I hope this will be useful for data analytics. So in this presentation, I am going to cover these things. So basically in linear algebra, I will try to cover principal component analysis and singular value decomposition, because these are the something like very good concepts through linear algebra. And in probability theory, maybe I will try to cover something related to maximum likelihood estimation, because within 1 hour or 2 hours, it may not be possible to give a full picture of these two fields, linear algebra and probability theory. So straight away we will go into the presentation. See, the basic thing is that representation. If we want to represent something, how is that we are going to represent the things? In data analytics or in machine learning or in many engineering problems, this is one of the big challenges, how to represent the things. Okay, so it is not that only the decimal format is the representation. See, we are having even complex numbers are there, and we are able to work with complex numbers also, right? So how we are going to represent the objects, real world objects or concepts, is one of the important things. Okay, so there could be various representations. Among the various representations, finding suitable one is one of the important things actually. Once you find the suitable representation, perhaps half of the problem is solved. Okay. See, sometimes when we are trying to work with very small numbers, then perhaps the representation would be something like this. If it is a number like this, maybe it can be written like this, and it can be represented like this. And we know that this is going to be 0.5 multiplied by 10 power minus 8. Once we know this, working with this may be correct actually. Correct in the sense that it can give us better results. Similarly, if we are going to work with very big numbers, let us say some astronomically big numbers if we are going to work, then instead of working with those numbers, it may be good to work with the logarithm of those numbers, right? Similarly, sometimes we may not be able to represent a number in exact form. For example, if you want to represent square root of 2, decimal format or binary format or any format actually don't have correct or exact representation for this. So one better way is to represent like this. And in fact, nowadays the new algorithm, the new languages are using these type of representations. Okay. So in this context, see, we want to represent some real world object. So normally what we say is that we can represent by using various features or attributes for the real world object. Let us say that we are having here this many objects are there. Let us say these are, we can call these are object 1, object 2, so on, object 3, object 4, object 5. Okay. Is this a good representation? See, for example, we want to find the similarity between objects, or we want to group the objects, similar objects we want to group, right? Is this a good representation? That is the question actually. Now, one of the important questions is, are there any redundant attributes or are there any irrelevant attributes in the representation? This is one of the important things in the data analysis. So in this table, can you see any irrelevant or redundant attributes? Can anybody say that? You can turn on your mic and you can speak.
Attribute 2 and 4, sir.
Attributes 2 and 4. Is there any other answer? Attributes 2 and attribute 4. Why? Why these are irrelevant?
They are not irrelevant, but they are redundant.
Redundant, you are saying. Okay.
Right,
you are right actually. Yeah, you are right. So there are A2 and A4 are not needed actually. Removing A2 and A4 does not alter the structure. That is, the distance between any two objects is going to be same even after you are going to remove this one. See, any distance like Euclidean distance or any other distance, that is going to remain same even after removing A2 and A4. Do you accept this? Even after removing A2 and A4, distance between any two objects is going to remain same. Right. So in fact, the dimensionality of this data, even though there are 6 features are there, apparently it looks like it is a 6D data, right? 6-dimensional data. But actually, the dimensionality of this data is 4 only. Okay. It is not 6. The number of attributes is not the dimensionality of the data. Okay. Now, this is the next example. We are having 2 features, 2 attributes, right? 2 attributes are there. Can we eliminate any one of these things? And in fact, there is a picture. In fact, we have shown a diagram of this one also. When we draw it on the XY plane, maybe let us say that this plane, this is A1 and this is A2. In this plane, if we plot the data elements, it is going to look like this. as such, it seems that we cannot remove any attribute, right? But in fact, the dimension of this data is also one. It is a 1D data. This is a 1D data. This one is. It may be surprising why this is 1D data, right? We will see that in the next slide. The answer is there. So a one-dimensional representation without any loss, actually, without any loss, should be possible for us. So the fundamental thing in linear algebra is to find that 1D representation. So now the same data is shown here. Now what I am going to do is that I am going to change the basis. Instead of the original basis A1 and A2, I am trying to find a new basis B1 and B2. New bases are like this. One can see that B1 is this is B1 and this is B2. If you are going to see like this, in this new basis, if you are going to represent the data is going to be like this. Now can you say which one can be removed? Obviously it is B2, right? B2 can be removed. So this is essential data actually. This column is enough actually. This column has the same information as the two columns in the previous table. Right? So in fact, one can see that relative distance is intact. Intact means they are same, right? And one of the important other things is that given this 1D representation, it is possible for us to retrieve back the original representation. Okay. After all, we are trying to change the basis again back to A1 and A2. We are going to get exactly A1 and A2, same thing we are going to get. So that's why this representation is lossless. Okay. And we say that dimension of this data is 1. In this fact, we are going to say, now let us come to this table. This table is also one-dimensional, even though apparently there are 4 attributes are there. This table is also one-dimensional. Why it is one-dimensional means all these things, all these data objects are, if you are going to see this in this 4D space, A1, A2, A3, A4, this 4-dimensional space, all these objects are lying on a line actually. Okay. One can see that each one is a multiple of the other object. Okay. So each object can be represented with a single number without losing anything actually, right? For example, I can say that the new basis for the data is, for example, you can take that one as the first object itself. First object, let us say this object itself, we can call this one as the new basis. In terms of the new basis, the first object is number 1. Second object is, what is the number for the second object? It is minus 0.5, right? Third object number is how much? It is, can anybody say what could be the one-dimensional representation for the third object, provided we take this object 1 as the basis? So if I take object 1 as the basis, object 1 representation is 1. Object 2 representation is minus 0.5. Why this is so? This is object 2 is, one can see that object 2 is, after all, this is minus 0.5 times object 1, right? It is also lying on the same direction as object 1. So that's why Object 2 can be represented as minus 0.5. Now object 3.
1.5.
Object 1.5. Very good. Object 3 is 2. Object 4 is obviously
2.
Object 4.
2 times object 1.
Object 5 is
2.5.
2.5.
2.5 times.
2.5. See, this is a one-dimensional representation of the same data. This is enough actually. If you want to analyze this data for all our engineering purposes, this is enough actually. And from this 1D data, it is possible for us to retrieve back that 4D data. 4D data, even though I am saying it is 4D data, it is a 4 attributed data. 4 attributes can be retrieved back. Right. So here you can see that we have saved 75% of the space. Right. And this is one of the important things actually. This is called as actually this. Yeah.
Sir, will you once again tell me, sir? I couldn't get, sir. How you are transforming that to one-dimensional, sir?
See, there is for this data as such, for this data, there is a basis, right? There is a basis for this data. That basis is what we are calling as A1, A2. Actually, this 4D, I can't draw on the screen actually, right? A3 is there and A4 is also there. In this 4-dimensional space, each one is a point. Right?
Yes, sir.
Do you accept? Each one
Yes,
is a
sir.
point in this 4D space, right? Now, I am going to create a 1D space. 1D space perhaps has the only one thing, that is B. B is the 1D space.
Okay.
In this 1D space, each object I can represent as a point. So the
Okay,
first
sir.
object I am going to represent as this point at a distance 1. Second object I am going to represent at a distance minus 0.5. Okay, minus 0.5. Third object at a distance 1.5. Okay, and the fourth object at a distance 2. And the fifth object at a distance 2.5. Again, I am able to represent all the 5 objects, but in 1D, right?
Yes, sir. That's
This 1D, yeah, this B, how you got this B is one of the important questions, right?
That's the question, sir.
Yeah, so that's what we are going to answer. We will see in the next slide also how we can get this B. So in this one, visually one can get this B. Visually seeing that everything is there. Actually, we want the basis to be something like unit vector, right? So in fact, in this case, the basis which we took is the first element. This is the basis we took. This is not a unit vector actually. To be precise, according to linear algebra, the basis means the length of that basis vector should be 1 actually. This is not 1 actually. So except for that, it is okay. Right. Now, we will come to your question of how this B is found.
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the dimension of the data? See, normally people say that dimension of the data is number of attributes, right? No, that is the wrong definition actually. The dimension of the data is number of independent components needed to represent the data. Okay. And if you want a precise definition of this one has to refer to the linear algebra book actually. Okay. So it's a number of independent components, not the there should not be dependency between components, right? So the number of such components is called as the dimension. Okay. The data can be seen as a matrix. So each row can be seen as an object or the data element, and each column can be seen as a feature or a vector. Actually, then the number of independent components is called as rank of the matrix. Okay, rank of the matrix means this one. The number of independent components needed to represent the data matrix, the data. Okay. So this is actually what is called as the dimensionality. So many people wrongly understand this one. Okay. Now this concept of reducing the dimension of the data is something which is very important. So if the rank of the data is less than the number of features, then the data can be represented without any loss. What I mean here is that the data can be recovered back. Without any loss, the data can be represented with fewer features. So that means that the local structure is going to be the same, right? And the original data can be recovered back. This is called as lossless. Sometimes, now the next question is, okay, some loss is all right for us. A little bit of loss is okay, but I want to reduce the number of attributes. So then is it possible? So in this case, the rank is 2 for this data. You can see that for this data as such, it's not lying on a single line. Here you can see that this data as such, if these are the 2 dimensions, this data as such is not lying on a single line. The rank of this one is 2. Right? You require, if you want to represent this exactly or correctly, you require 2 attributes. But I don't want 2 attributes. I want only 1 attribute. So I want to reduce the dimension. That is, somehow I don't like 2 things. I want only 1 thing. Maybe because I don't have space, I don't have the resources to work with 2 attributes. But I want to work with only 1 attribute. But that 1 attribute should be good enough. The loss I am going to incur. So here we are going to lose something, right? So that whatever I am going to lose should be minimum. Okay. So one can see in this picture itself, this type of analysis of finding low dimensional representation is called as low rank approximation. This is what is called as low rank approximation. So here one can see that if this is the given data, visually one can see that if you want only 1 dimension means 1 line. That 1 line has to be this line, and all the data elements you can see it as lying on this 1 line. Okay, so that each one as if it is going to lie on this 1 line. So then we can take this direction of this 1 line as the basis, and each data element I am going to represent with this dot on this line. So this is what is called as projecting the data onto this line. I am going to project the data onto this line, and this is what I am going to represent. For example, after projecting the data onto this line, maybe I will say that now because this is the basis, this basis I may call this one as B. So this number, how much distance it is away from this one, is going to be the 1 number. How much away this one on the same line, the next number is the next number, so on, right? But it is on this line only. But with this one, you may not be able to retrieve back the exact information of the 2D data, but more or less you can retrieve back. The relative structure is more or less preserved here, right? Okay. Do you accept? Is there any objection for this? See, if I want to retrieve back from this 1D, what I am going to retrieve back? I am going to retrieve back this one, this point. I will not be able to retrieve this one. I will be able to retrieve this one. Okay. But this is okay, right? This is very close to the original data element. So the loss here is less. So the loss can be represented as this distance plus this distance, something like that. The loss can be represented. How much we are going to lose in this representation, right? So this finding low rank approximation is normally done if we are interested only with the linear analysis. It is normally done with principal component analysis. A very similar approach is called as singular value decomposition. Okay. See, if this is the given data, then principal component analysis will try to find the basis actually. Is new basis is going to give actually, such that the first principal vector is the first basis. The second principal vector is going to be the second basis. And what this is saying is that if you want a 1D data, then project onto this first principal component, that is onto this one. Project onto this one the data if you want a 1D representation for the data. Okay, the second principal component can be thrown away. This is what it is saying, right? So how is that this is found? The first principal component is found. One can see that here, how is that the first principal component is found? If I see this data is going to look almost like this, right? All the points are lying in this one. So what can you say about the first PC? The first PC is something which is going to capture the more information, right? The more information means what? If there is diversion or the difference or the variance, that variance has to be captured, right? That variance has to be captured. So this direction is the direction in which the variance is maximum. Do you accept? This is the direction in which for the data, the variance is maximum. That is, the data is varying too much in this direction. Whereas in this direction, the second PC direction, in this direction, the variance is less, very less actually. So that's why the second PC can be ignored because it's not varying. So this is what in the first table you said that because the data is not changing, everything is 0, 0, 0. So you said that it is redundant or it is something irrelevant, and you said that it can be removed. So here it is changing very less actually. If it is changing very less, maybe it also can be thrown away. Right. So this is a fundamental concept. That is, the maximum variance direction is going to give us the first PC, and the second maximum variance direction is going to give us the second PC, so on. Right. So basically what it is going to do is that it is going to find a new basis. Yes, sir. For the data, it is going to find the new basis. And in the new basis, you are going to represent the data, and some basis vectors, you say that is not so important for us, you are going to throw it away. So this is what is called as low rank approximation, right? So PCA algorithm is like this. See, if you want to understand why this has to work and why this algorithm will work, you have to see the book or something like that. See, I am saying that the variance direction should be large enough, right? There is something called as covariance matrix for the given data. If the data is going to have attributes like, let us say the attributes are something like x1, x2, let us say up to xd, then what do you mean by covariance? I'm trying to write here a matrix XD. Now, the first entry here, the first column, first row entry here is the variance of the X1. That is the X1 column is there, right? The X1 column.
0.
Yeah. No, it is not 0. It is a variance of X1. It may be having some variance, right? X1 column need not be having the same value, right? It is positive actually.
Okay.
It's a variance of X1. That is in one column, the data is like this. Data is X1, X2 up to XD. In this one column, what is the variance of this one column? That is that one. Then, what is that I'm going to write here? This is called as covariance of X1 and X2. That means if I vary X1, how much X2 is going to vary? This is a measure which is going to measure if I'm going to vary X1 by 1 unit, how much X2 is going to vary, right? Technically, there is a definition for this one, but that definition you can see it in any book. But this is what actually, right? So if I'm going to have here something like ijth component is there, ijth component here. This ijth component is covariance between the features xi and xj. Okay. So once we are having this matrix can be calculated from the given data matrix, right? Okay. So from the given data matrix, this covariance matrix can be calculated, and this is going to be symmetric. The important thing is that this is a symmetric matrix. And also there is one more property for this one. That is, this is going to be positive semi-definite matrix. So this terminology, if you are interested, you have to refer to some standard book. So this matrix is going to be like this. And what happens is that the principal components are going to be eigenvectors of this matrix. Okay. Principal components are going to be eigenvectors of this matrix. So what we do is that because this is real symmetric matrix, it will have all eigenvectors. That is, sometimes there may be a problem actually in the matrices. The number of eigenvectors need not be always same as the maximum. Okay, but in this case, because it is symmetric and it is a real matrix, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Now we are able to hear you.
Right. So, because it is symmetric one, it will have d eigenvectors, and these d eigenvectors will be orthonormal. Okay. Now, this is going to give us the new basis actually. And the importance of the PCs, which one is first PC among these d eigenvectors? The eigenvector for which the eigenvalue is maximum. See, one other important thing is that all the eigenvalues will be non-negative for this here. So, the eigenvalues are going to be something like lambda 1 is the largest one. The next eigenvalue is lambda 2. The next is lambda 3. So on. It is going to be up to lambda d. Okay. So this eigenvector, the eigenvector here, maybe I will call this one as something like V1. This eigenvector corresponding to the largest eigenvalue is the first PC. So this is the first PC. And along this direction, the data is varying too much. The next dimension or the direction along which the data is varying is this V2. V2 is the eigenvector for the eigenvalue lambda 2, right? So if you want m dimensional representation where this m is less than d, let us say that d may be 100, but you want m to be something like 5. This 100 attribute table is there, but you want only 5 attribute table. So then you take first 5 eigenvectors with the largest possible eigenvalues. So if you are going to project onto that space, you are going to get the 5-dimensional data. So this 5-dimensional data is going to be the best possible representation for the data. Best possible in the sense that if you have resources for only 5 attributes, then this is the best possible representation. Okay, so instead of working with 100 attributes, you can work with 5 attributes. Still, your answers, more or less, all of your engineering answers for your engineering problems will be answered. Okay. Now, this, even though I am not going to give here the complete picture of this, why this PCA has to work on these things, roughly, I think you are able to understand. Okay. So these eigenvectors are going to be orthogonal. We can make that into orthonormal. Orthonormal means, after all, it is going to make the vectors into unit vectors. So we can get orthonormal basis. So project onto this basis, new basis. Okay. So then you are going to get the new data, right? Now, this is one application. Some of you might have seen these slides, right? This is available somewhere in the internet. I have copied this one. So the faces, earlier, nowadays people are not using this one. Maybe some 5 years back or so people are using this one. The face recognition, if you want to do the face recognition. So what happens, you are having the database of faces. Okay. So each face, now I will draw this here. Each face I can say is object, right? Is object that face 1, phase 2, phase 3. Maybe there are something like, let us say something like 10,000 phases are there. And each one is a phase, right? What is this, each one, this. So, I don't know why this is coming like this, but let me try to do something. See, now the attributes are needed, right? Attribute 1 is there, attribute 2 is there, like this, right? This is the data matrix for us. Data matrix is like this. Okay. Now, each phase, let us say that is something like a 1024 by 1024 image. See, my pen is not working well here because I am working from my home. If I am in my office, then that may work well, I think. So each one is 1024 by 1024. Each image is, each face is. There are 10,000 faces in the database. So how many attributes will be there for this data? These are also data, right? How many attributes will be there? in this table? How many
10,000.
columns? Huh?
10,000. 10,000.
No, that is rows, number of rows actually. You are saying 10,000 rows are there, but I am asking the number of columns. Each image is 1024 by
1024. 1024.
no. So because you see that each image has 1 million pixels are there, right? Each image is having 1 million pixels, right? And each pixel is going to occupy one value here. This is the pixel value. So number of attributes is going to be 1 million. So this is a very big one, right? 1 million columns are needed here. Actually, if you are going to store, this is what you are actually storing. You may not be knowing this one. This is what you are actually doing, right? And if you want to compare two faces, saying that these two faces belongs to the same person, or given a new face, you want to identify which one is the closest face to this person, right? So then how is that one is going to work? There are a lot of image processing tools are there, pre-processing, all these things are there. Okay. Now the simplest thing, what this PCA is saying is that you employ the PCA. You find the covariance matrix and find maybe the top 6 eigenvectors. Now, the important thing is that if I do PCA on this one, then see, originally here I require 1 million attributes to represent one image here, right? But if I go for a something like a 6-dimensional principal components, then each face can be represented only with 6 attributes. So apparently here for this data, what is happening is that one can see that what are these things actually? What are these things? These things are also faces, right? It looks like faces. These things are also looks like faces. But these are the principal components. These are the principal components. See, the principal component means it's a basis, right? Basis is also a vector. That means basis is also a face here, right? Basis is also a face. Huh? Now, if I am going to project this face onto this 6-dimensional space, then I am going to get these numbers. So this space can be represented with 6 attributes like this: -8, 29, 2900, 1751, 1445, 4238, 6193. So these 6 numbers are very good numbers. From these 6 numbers, if I take this basis, I can retrieve back the face. More or less, I am going to retrieve back the face. Not exactly, maybe a slightly blurred face or something like that I am going to retrieve. Okay, so these basis vectors are nothing but principal components which are obtained from the eigenvectors of the given data's covariance matrix. Okay, so now if you are having these 2 images, one can see that representation for these 2 images with only 6 components is going to be like this. With the 6 components, you can find the distance between these 2 faces, right? Similarity between these 2 faces, all these things one can find. So if you want to retrieve similar faces, you can retrieve from this one. And it is very good to have, instead of having 1 million attributes, having only 6 attributes is very much advantageous, right? Okay. Right. Are you having any questions? Actually, we're not going into the details, much details. But more or less, if you are capturing what I am saying, that is, if you are capturing the important idea behind what I am saying, that may be good enough, I think. Because these lectures has to span at least in a course, this will go for 3 or 4 lectures, it will go.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Suppose if the face is three-dimensional point distribution, okay, or even if it is a general point distribution which is in three dimensions, maybe like a sphere or whatever it is, and in that case, what will be the principal components there? Because everything is defined in terms of x, y, z, and the distributions are there. So if you want to check for the similarity or matching of the faces or even the spherical distribution, then what will be the principal components here? Or
No,
how many vectors? Yeah.
No. See, whether it is 3-dimensional data or 1 million dimensional data, it is immaterial. Only thing what we want is the dimensionality you want. If you want 1D dimensional representation, you can get the first PC alone. If you want to 2-dimensional representation, you can get only the first 2 PCs. Okay. But now there will be loss actually. You are unable to retrieve back the original data. Right. That may happen. If you don't want that to happen, then the rank of the data also must be equal to your reduced dimension. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, for the faces, there must be loss, right? There will be loss. You are going to retrieve only the blood faces, something like that. You are not going to retrieve the exact faces. Huh? But this is a good representation with which one can work. See, what happens is that if you are working with 1 million attributes, there is something called as cuts of dimensionality. And if you want to create any model for that one, normally that model parameters should be in the magnitude of 1 million. If you are trying to build any classifier or any other similarity measure or whatever is that, it is going to depend upon the number of attributes you are having, right? Right. So creating a model means you are trying to fit the data so that you are going to find the model parameters like that. If I want to find 1 million parameters, and if I am having only 10,000 data objects, see, there is a potential problem here. Say, for example, I will give a small example here, because finally data means, see, the model fitting, or what do you mean by saying that this model I want is something like this is nothing but solving this problem, Ax equal to B or something like that. Okay. And if you want to find this X means, you can find this as A inverse B, provided A is invertible, right? But if A is a matrix like this, then there can be many solutions. A is like this. The number of rows is less, the number of columns is more. You may not get a unique answer. You are going to get many answers. See, the fitting means finding that A inverse or something like that. You want to find X actually, right? If A is invertible, then it is okay. Otherwise, it is a problematic one. And the other extreme is that A may be like this. The number of rows are too many, the number of columns are less. So this is a overfitted matrix. Okay, this is what we call as overfitted one. There is no solution for this. Solution may not exist at all. Okay. Solution may not exist. So this is underfitted matrix where you are going to get several solutions. Okay, so these are the two problems actually. All these problems, if you want to solve, then you will not be able to find this A inverse. Okay, there are ways in which one can find this. Pseudo inverse is there and all these things are there. Basically, what I am trying to say here is that the model fitting is going to be like this. You are trying to fit a model means what? Given X, finding, see, if I am going to find this X, given X, I am going to find this B. Right. Actually, what happened is that I observed this B. This is what I have observed actually. And I believe that there is a relationship between this X and B. So given B, I want to find this X. What is that X which has produced this B, right? So I was given with various equations here. This is the set of linear equations I have given. Okay. Given this B, I want to find this X. This is the problem. So for this problem, one has to find this A. Finding this A is nothing but model fitting. Or finding this A inverse is nothing but model fitting. See, doing this problem with 1 million dimensional data is very difficult, but doing this with a 6-dimensional data may be very easy. Okay. Okay, so this is what it is saying. Then, what about the singular value decomposition? See, PCA is a good one, but PCA works with the matrix. For example, if your original number of attributes are 10,000, then the covariance matrix size is going to be 10 power 8. So one has to work with this matrix. It's very difficult to work with this matrix. So is there any other way of getting these principal components? So the other way is the singular value decomposition. Both are similar, except that the way in which it is working is going to be dissimilar. Okay, so here PC will work with covariance matrix. Covariance matrix we write like this. Whereas the SVD will work with the data matrix itself. The data matrix itself it is going to work with. So SVD may be faster than PCA. Okay. So now what SVD will say is that you give any matrix X, you give any matrix X, this can be decomposed into 3 matrices, and some people will write this one as U sigma V transpose. Okay, any matrix X. The important thing is any matrix X can be reduced, can be decomposed, or can be written as a factor of these 3 matrices, such that the first and the last matrices are orthogonal matrices. First and last matrices are orthogonal. The middle matrix is diagonal. See, this is the matrix which is if your entire data X is n by d data is there. This is orthogonal matrix of size n by n. This is orthogonal matrix of size d by d. This is diagonal matrix of size n by d. So for any matrix, it is possible to decompose. Okay. Orthogonal means its columns are orthonormal with each other. Okay. So if you can do this one, then this is almost equal to doing the PCA. And this is going to capture eigenvalues. Actually, this is going to capture the eigenvectors. Okay. So if you are going to do this one, right? So this U can be found from the matrix X, X transpose. Eigenvectors of X, X transpose are U. V are eigenvectors of X transpose X. These things can be found in a straightforward way because these two U and V are having some structure which is similar to each other. So solving one can give us some information about how to solve this one. So it can be solved. Okay. It can be solved in a much better way than finding eigenvectors of a covariance matrix. Okay. And this middle matrix, actually it is a diagonal matrix where each entry is square root of eigenvalue of that PC. Okay. And these are called as singular values. So that's why this is called as singular value decomposition. So in essence, PCA, SVD both are same, but only thing is that we are it's like instead of going via some way, you are going via some other way. That's all. Okay. For example, if X is this matrix, with this matrix, I can decompose this into 3 matrices like this. Okay. Now, what happens is that if I'm going to have this decomposition, then my first PC is going to be this one. This is the first PC, this vector. This row vector is going to be the first PC. This row vector is going to be the second PC. Okay. So if you are going to project onto this one, if you want only one-dimensional representation, take only this one. Right. And not only that, this is giving some extra information. What is the importance of this first dimension here? What is the importance of the first dimension? What is the importance of the second dimension? This is saying that the data indeed is of rank 2. The data indeed is of rank 2. That's why the last column, that is here in the middle matrix, this is all zeros are there here. Okay. So now if this is the matrix A, this is the matrix A, then if I am going to decompose this one, factor this one into the 3 components, this is U, some people will write this one as sigma, okay. Some people will write like this, that's okay. So now what can happen is that in the middle one, the lower things can be all zeros. Okay, or in the middle one, the right thing can be all zeros. See, this is saying that if you are going to get like this, okay, then this is saying that the rank of this one is in fact 3 only. Those 3 are this. See, originally you had data like this, right? Maybe like this. maybe like this, let us say, where you are having 5 attributes are there. You take this example, 5 attributes are there. Now after doing this one, you found this one like this. This is all zeros are there. Here all zeros are there. Obviously these vectors are irrelevant for us. This will not count actually. So this is the first PC, this is the second PC, this is the third PC. Okay. Now then the data in this new basis, is going to be this one. When you are going to multiply this and this together, you are going to get the data, which is the data in this new basis. Okay. So you are going to get here a 3-column data. Instead of 5-column data here, you are going to get a 3-column data. Okay. Now, there is some mathematics for this one. Is how it is done. All these things are there. It is the optimization problem where we are trying to minimize some norm of the matrix. So these things are there, but we can skip these things. We can go ahead. Okay, if I'm going to get like this, so then see, then what happens is that if I want only 2 attributes or 2-dimensional data, then what I can do is that I can take only these 2 things. This is the first PC, this is the second PC. I can take only these 2 things. I can remove this one also. I can remove these things. Okay, that means that I am going to remove this one. Anyhow, I'm removing this one. I am going to remove this one also. Okay, so in this basis, the data I am going to get is this matrix multiplied with this diagonal matrix. This is the data I'm going to get. These are directly we can get the data in the new basis. Okay, and there are other ways to understand this one, right? And the loss is going to be given like this. When we are having these singular values are there, the last singular value beyond which you have given up is going to represent the loss. That's why SVD decomposition or PCA decomposition is the best one in terms of the loss. Okay, right. So now this is one application. This is data where each object here is a document. Each object is a document here. This is object 1, this is object 2, so on. Right. We are having 7 objects are there here. These are documents. In these documents, because this is an example, in these documents there are words are there like this. The words are, these are the words. Okay, and these are the frequency number of times these words are occurring. So in document, this document, the term data, the word data is occurring only once, whereas in this one, the word data is occurring 2 times, so on, like this. Right. Now, if in the document analysis, the text analysis, very often what we want is that we want to retrieve the documents, relevant documents you want to retrieve or something like that. We will be willing to do. Now, if this is the given data matrix, can anybody say what is the rank of this matrix? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes.
Just by looking into this one, can you say the rank of this matrix? Rank means
5
5, sir.
5 is the number of attributes, but I want to rank actually. Rank the number of independent components. See, I give you one hint here. The first 4 rows are multiples of first object. The last 3 rows are multiples of the last object. Okay. Without doing anything, I can say that object 1, if object 1 is there, and let us say object 7 is there, the first object, if I want to represent, the first object 1, it is object 1, object 7 is not there, first object. Second object is 2 times of object 1, 0 times of object 7. Third object is how many times of object 1?
1.
1, 0 times of object 7. Fourth object is 5 times of object 1, 0 times of object 7. Similarly, I can go on to the other objects. Object 5 is 0 times of object 1, 2 times of object 2. Object 6 is 0 times of object 1, 3 times of object 2. Object 7 is 0 times of object 1, 1 times of object 7, right? Are you able to see this? So this is the data. This is the 2D data actually. For 7 objects, this is the 2D data actually. And this is lossless. So the rank of this one is 2, in fact. Rank of this matrix is 2. Okay. Now, in the text analysis, we normally employ this SVD. And if I'm going to employ the SVD, I'm going to get like this. This is the data matrix is there on the left-hand side. I'm going to do like this. What happens is that I'm going to get it like this only. The other things are going to be zeros here. Okay. And if I'm going to decompose this one, I'm going to get like this. And one can see that this is the PC1, this is PC2. These two things, if you are going to multiply, is going to be the data in the new basis. Okay. And one important thing here is that the middle diagonal matrix is saying something about the see what happens here is that earlier we had something like we are saying data, information, retrieval, brain, lung, like that, right? These are the attributes. So in the new data also attributes are there, right? But what are the names we are going to give for these attributes? In the new data, we are having only 2 bases. That means finally I am going to get only the 2 column, right? 2 column data I am going to get. Right. And what name I can give to this column? What name I can give to this column? I don't know this actually. What name I can give to this column? What name I can give to that column, right? But some expert can give the name for this one, saying that this is concept 1, this is for concept 2 or something like that. This is concept 1, this is concept 2 or something like that they can say. And in this case, we can give names also for this one, right? So the terms now are replaced by concepts. Okay. But only thing is that we don't know what is the good name for the concept. Now this is the actual thing. If I'm going to decompose the original matrix, I'm going to get like this. Okay. Now, yes, this is same data actually. I haven't done anything. These are the attributes, names are like this only. Right. So now what happens is that the name for this one can be the concept. Now some expert has said that this is the CS concept. That is because this is related to data, information retrieval, all these things. These are all computer science basic things. So we will give a name for this one saying that CS concept. So some expert has said that this is concept, CS concept. We don't know actually, and similarly, some experts said that this column, if you want to give a name to this column, you say that this is medical concept. Medical concept, you can say like this. Okay. Right. Now, your basis is this one. This is the basis. Okay. See, why we are having this basis is that we want the basis to be unit vectors. That's why we got basis like this. Now, what this is saying, this one is saying the strength of the CS concept, strength of the MD concept. In other words, what this is saying is that in the given data, the variance in this concept is higher. The variance in CS concept is higher when compared to the variance in the medical concept. This is what it is saying actually. Okay. And if you want only one dimension, then what is that we are going to do? So this is the strength of CS concept. So this data now, actually what happens is that in the basis vector, we are getting all these things are also encoded in the basis vector, because the basis vector has to be in the same space as this one. So these are going to be corresponding to these things, data, information, retrieval, and these are going to be corresponding to the other things like brain, lung, like that. Okay. Now, if I want to have only one-dimensional representation, now what is that I am going to do? I am going to take only one PC, that is the first PC only I am going to take. This first PC alone I am going to take. I am going to remove this one. That means I am going to remove this one. I am going to remove this one. So now if I am going to multiply these two matrices together, I am going to get a 1D representation. That 1D representation is the one-dimensional best representation for this data. Okay. One can easily do that one, right? One can easily find that 0.18 multiplied by 9.64, 0.36 multiplied by 9.64, so on. You are going to get one column only. And apparently what is that you are going to get here is that the last three entries of this one column data are going to be zeros. So if you want to represent this entire data as a single column, you are going to multiply this one by 9.64, all these things. 0, if you are going to multiply by 9.64, you are going to get 0 only, right? In some sense, this is the one-dimensional representation of the data. So if you want to lose the information, and if you are willing to have only one attribute, then it is saying that I have this one attribute. In this one attribute, what is that you lost? You lost the information about this one. About that one, you said that there is no information. All the information is there, they are zeros, because you allowed for this loss. Right. And if you are with this one-dimensional representation, if you are trying to retrieve back the original data, what will happen is that in this one-dimensional thing, if you are trying to retrieve back the original data, then you are going to retrieve back like this only. these things you will not be able to retrieve. These things you will not be able to retrieve. This is something which is not so significant actually. If at all you are trying to relatively see significance, this is what we lost. Okay. Now, then I said that this is going to give us the new space, right? The new space is going to be having, this is basis 1, this is basis 2. Now, there is something called as latent semantic indexing. That means now you work with this space. Don't work with the original space. So in that case, this is the new space. If I am going to give a query, if I am trying to find to which concept it belongs, so then what I am going to do, I am going to see where this query point is going to lie here and to which one it is going to be closer, right? So if this is a query given, having data is there. So these are the basis vectors. Okay, the basis vectors are like this, right? I have projected this query onto this space. Now the concepts I got are like this, because the two attributed thing, I know that this is CS concept, this is medical concept. So it is saying that CS concept is 0.58. For the given query, now I can say that it belongs to the CS concept. That means it belongs to something which is related to this data information retrieval, something like that. Okay. So this is one of the important techniques in document analysis or document retrieval, something like that. Okay. So with this, the linear algebra thing is over. Now we will go to the probability theory. If you are having any general questions, you can ask me. Yeah, I haven't covered many things actually. And maybe many doubts you might be having. Okay. See, what we did is approximation actually, right? The linear algebra or any other engineering, if you are trying to optimize the resources, all these things, you will go for approximation. Low dimensional approximation, low rank approximation, all these things you are going to do. Instead of working with the exact thing, you work with the approximate things. Working with approximate things may be easier for us, right? Now, the other type of information which is available to us is uncertain information. Uncertain information. That means you might be having columns like this. You might be having columns like this. You are going to have values also like this. But you are not sure that this is the exact value. Okay, you are not sure that it is exact value. Right. So how to work with uncertainty? This uncertainty can be measured. Measured means it can be quantified and it can be used actually in getting the results. So uncertainty, quantification of uncertainty can be done by using the probability theory. Okay. Uncertainty can be there because of so many things actually. Maybe there can be error in the measurement, there can be noise, so many other things are there because of which uncertainty is going to come into picture. You might have said that it is 5.5, actually its value is something like 4.5 only. Because of some error in the measurement, you might have given the wrong value, right? Okay. Now, this probability is one of the important subjects which are used in the data analysis, and most of us know that in probability we are having something like sample space is there. Sample space means the output, that is the number of outcomes of the experiment, right? So these things may be known to us. So the first one is the sample space is there. That is, if I am going to do the experiment, what is the outputs I am going to get? And I am interested on this one. This is called as events. Events means what are the interesting things for us? Okay. Maybe each event is one of the attributes. Then the probability theory depends on the three axioms. This may be important for you. See, the probability theory, the modern probability theory depends on these three axioms only. The old probability theory was different actually. The modern probability theory simply says that these are the three axioms. That means for every event, the probability should be non-negative. If it is a complete sample space, then the probability is going to be 1. If two events are disjoint, then probability of getting the union unit is going to be summation of these two individual probabilities. Okay. Once we are having these axioms, we can derive the many other rules from this one. If it is not disjoint, if two events alpha and beta are not disjoint, then the rule can be something like this. It's going to be like this. Okay. Right. So the event means it is a subset of the sample space. Now there are something like assuming that this has happened or this is given to us. Given this one, see, very often in engineering problems, what happens is I am going to observe something. That means I have observed this. That means it is given. Then what is the probability that something is the reason for this? Okay. See, I will tell you in easy terms from where we are getting all these problems. See, normally what happens is that cause gives effect, right? Okay. If you are having this example, I usually give in my class also. If you are having malaria, you will be having high temperature. Okay. So actually what you are doing is that you can measure only high temperature. And you are going to say that the cause for this one is malaria. But the problem comes here is that the problem is that now typhoid is there. Typhoid is the cause. This also can give high temperature. Okay. Now, given high temperature, what is that you can say? See, this is called as the reverse engineering problem actually. Normally given cause, you can find the effect, right? given that there is malaria, you know that he will be having high temperature. There's no doubt about this one, right? Given that he has typhoid, he will be having high temperature. But now, from the effect, I want to find the cause. You cannot find the cause exactly. You can predict the cause. What would be the probable cause for this effect? Because let us say that this is the only attribute is high temperature is there or not. This is the only attribute we are having. Then given high temperature, you measure the temperature is high. Given high temperature, with what probability I can say that the cause for this one is malaria? Okay. This is, in essence, this is what is the problem. That's all. This is what is called as predictive data analysis. Predictive data analysis, in essence, is this one. And this is one of the important things even in the machine learning. In the machine learning also, you are going to see only the attribute values. And in some sense, you are asking what is the cause for these attribute values. That means what is the class from which the data element is coming, so that it is going to have these attribute values. Okay. Say if it is something like a rainy season, where a lot of mosquitoes can be there and all these things, malaria may be predominant. 80% of people are getting malaria in that weather. So high temperature with probability 0.8 can mean that he has malaria. Right. Maybe in some locality, let us say in some particular areas, typhoid is very prevalent. Then we can say that given high temperature, typhoid is the reason with the probability 0.6 or something like that. Right. And now if you want to reduce this probability and if you want to be more accurate, then you are going to measure some other attributes. So then you might be measuring some other attribute also. If it is malaria, high temperature will be there, and some other, maybe this number of platelets in the blood will be this much, whatever is that. Some other test result is going to be there. And this is somewhere this is going to reduce the reason, the cause can be nagged down. Nagged down means it can be reduced, it can be narrowed down, the cause. Okay. Now, the probability, the conditional probability says that given that some event has occurred, given that he has high fever, what is the probability that he is having typhoid? So this can be defined like this. I think most of you know this one, conditional probability, and this is the law of total probability. If there are so many events are possible, typhoid is there, malaria is there, jaundice is there, so many things are there. What is the probability of each one of these things? All these things, this is called as law of total probability. There is some other laws are also there. One of the important things in the probability theory is random variables. See, the random variable means it is the outcome of the experiment. For example, if I am tossing 5 coins, the outcomes are going to be like this. I can't work with these outcomes as such. So what I will do is that I will map these outcomes onto real numbers. Okay. So in this experiment, for example, I am interested only on the number of tiles. Number of tails, I am going to get this 5 tosses. So then I want to map each one of these outcomes onto a real number, which is going to capture my interest. Right. So this one I am going to map to 0. This one I am going to map to 1. There is only one tail. This is also I am going to map to 1. This is also I am going to map to 1. So if I am going to have 2 tails, means I am going to map that to 2, so on, right? So now this mapping is what is called as random variable. See, random variable is a function. It's a function which is going to map the set of events onto the real numbers. And one of the important things to understand, the random variable is not a variable, it's a function. It's a function which is going to map the output of the experiment to a real number. Why this we are doing? We are doing this one because we can work only with the real numbers. In mathematics, working with the real numbers or working with the integers is very easy for us. Okay. And if you want to employ something like linear algebra or something like calculus, all these things, you have to work with the real numbers only. So that's why random variable is important. Okay. Now there are two types of random variables are there. Continuous random variable. That means it can take any value. Discrete random variable means it can take something like an integer. Okay. So for example, if I am going to throw an arrow onto this rectangle, it can hit anywhere, right? If I am going to throw an arrow onto this one. So the number of outcomes here is uncountably infinite, right? If you are going to be precise, the number of outcomes is going to be uncountably infinite. And this is continuous random variable. Okay. On the other hand, if I am tossing a coin, there are only two possible outcomes, head or tail. Right. So this is discrete actually, right? So that's why this is discrete random variable. Maybe tail I am going to map to 0, head I am going to map to 1. Right. Okay. Now, when we are working with the random variables, the important things are expectation. Is something like average. Average means is expectation. See, this need not be arithmetic average. Arithmetic average means something like you are going to find, you are going to add up all the things and divide by the number of elements, right? This need not be that one actually, because here we are going to take the probability. This is the output, this is the outcome. With what probability this outcome is possible. So when you are going to add up all these things, what you are going to get is called as expectation. Similarly, expectation of function of a random variable can be defined like this. Okay. For continuous random variables, it is the integration. Instead of summation here, you are going to employ the integration. Similarly, the function of continuous random variables, integrations can be defined like this. See, the expectation, variance, covariance, correlation, all these things are very important in data analytics. Then the variance can be defined like this. This is going to measure the dispersion in the data. This is going to measure the dispersion in the data. This is nothing but this is average dispersion of the data away from the mean. Right. There are other things are there. For the continuous random variable, it is the integration. One can know that. The covariance, as we have seen in the previous PCA, principal components, the covariance of two random variables. See, there we said that covariance is between two attributes, right? Actually, their attribute is a random variable, actually. Okay. So the covariance of two random variables x and y can be defined like this. right? So these things more or less one has to take it as it is. Then correlation. Correlation is normalized covariance. Normalized covariance is called as correlation. See, the correlation is going to be always between -1 and +1, whereas the covariance can be any number. See, the variance is always going to be non-negative. Variance is always going to be greater than or equal to 0. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, the variance is always going to be positive. It can be 0 also, but covariance can be negative also. Correlation is normalized covariance, that's all. And there are certain laws which are important. Expectation is additive in the sense that expectation of x plus y is going to be expectation of x plus expectation of y. This need not be the case with the variance, right? Similarly, the multiplicative law for expectation holds, right? If two random variables are independent, then expectation of x multiplied by y is going to be expectation of x multiplied by expectation of y. For variance, the things are not straightforward. It is different. And there are other things are also there. The conditional expectation is there. Given that some event has happened, what is the probability with which the other event has happened? What is the expected value that the other event has happened? What is the expected probability that the other event has happened? So this can be extrapolated from the previous things. Similarly, variance, right? Covariance, we know this one. See, covariance is measured between two dimensions. And maybe the next one, you can see that here, if the two random variables x and y are like this, and if you are going to plot this one, then positive covariance is the left hand side. Here, one can see that the cloud is more or less like this, right? Cloud is more or less like this. So that means if I am going to increase x, y is more or less is going to increase. On average, if I increase x, y is going to increase. This is what is called as positive covariance. These two random variables are positively, the covariance is positive between them. Whereas here one can see that if I am going to increase x, y is going to decrease. That's on average. So that's why it is negative covariance. Okay. There is other thing is there. How much uncertainty is there in the given data? How much uncertainty is there? There are ways in which the uncertainty can be measured in the data. That is, entropy is one thing which is going to measure the uncertainty in the data. There are formulas for this one. If the output is always going to be only one thing. So let us say that your coin has only head. Always you are going to get a head. Then there is no uncertainty, right? So in that case, entropy is going to be 0. If it is a very fair coin, then entropy is going to be 0.5. Okay. So the degree of uncertainty can be measured. Sometimes uncertainty is not that much actually. The coin may be very much biased. If you are going to do 10 tosses, 9 tosses you are going to get a head. Occasionally you are going to get a tail. So then uncertainty is not that much actually, right? So how much uncertainty is there can be measured. it can be used in the, it can be calculated by using entropy or something like that. This entropy is very much useful actually. Some of you can recall that there is something in the machine learning literature also, decision trees are there where information gain and all these things are there, right? Those are all based on the entropy only. Okay. Similarly, conditional entropies are there. Given something, how much uncertainty is still there? Given that some event has happened, how much uncertainty still is present? Okay. And mutual information is something like a correlation. It is also going to measure how much dependence is there between the random variables. If it is 0 means they are independent. Otherwise, it is going to be dependent. Okay. See, what happens is that there is a model from which the data is coming, right? This is what normally happens in the real world. There is a model. The Earth itself is the model actually. Rain is falling, something like cyclones are coming. All these things are happening, right? We are getting the data actually. Rainfall, seismic data, all these things is what we are getting, right? And what is that we are trying to do is that we are given with this one, given data, we are trying to estimate the model. That is, this is nothing but given the effect, we are trying to find the cause. This is what the probability we are doing. One of the important things in the probability theory is the Bayesian estimations. See, one of the important things here is that given the data, the model can be given in the form of a distribution, probability distribution. Now, given the data, finding the probability distribution is one of the important problems. So once you can find this one means you can answer many questions. Okay. So for this one and for other things, there is a technique called as maximum likelihood estimation. Maximum likelihood estimation is given data, we try to estimate what is the probability distribution from which the data is coming. Okay. Once we are having this one, the reverse engineering problems can be done by using the Bayesian theory and all these things. Bayesian theory is basically going to say that if high temperature is there, what is the probability by which he is having typhoid? Okay. So the Bayes rule, you might have heard this one. This is from the effect, you can estimate the cause. And this is one of the celebrated rules in the probability theory. This is also used in the machine learning. Okay. And the maximum likelihood estimate will say that if I am getting this data, most likely what would be the distribution? Yeah, same problem, like finding the cause given the data. Data is given. I want to find the distribution from which the data is coming. So here also I am trying to employ the same techniques, saying that if this is the distribution, what is the probability of getting this data, so that I am going to finally get the distribution. Okay. Sometimes these are optimization problems where logarithms can be used. Right. The gradient is used because it's an optimization problem. So calculus is going to come into picture. And we may assume that the data is something like Gaussian distribution. The data is Gaussian. The data is coming from this type of distributions. So if we are going to employ the maximum likelihood estimation, what happens is that the mean of this Gaussian distribution is going to be the mean of the data, and the covariance of the Gaussian distribution is going to be the covariance of the data. Okay. So this is what happens actually. The mean is going to be the arithmetic mean of the data, and that is the centroid of the data is going to be the mean if it is Gaussian, and the covariance is the sample covariance of the data. Okay, so these are some of the things. I don't have time to go into the details of all these things. I think the time is also now 11:20. If any general questions are there, you can ask me.
Sir, there are few questions in the chat box, sir.
Okay, so I will come back to the chat box. There is Rambabu. What is mean confidence? See, the mean means centroid, right? Centroid or something like that. You are going to estimate this one also from the given data, right? What is the variance of this estimation? Any estimation is going to have variance, right? It's not that you are going to find something exactly. From the data, if you are trying to estimate something means, it's not that you are going to estimate it exactly. There is going to be variance. Your estimation is approximation only. And what is the variance of your estimation? That variance can give you the confidence. Maybe for the variance, the Vandita Grover is asking something. I think Vandita Grover might be knowing the answer. Expectation of x minus mean whole square. When this is same as expectation of x square minus mean. I don't know. There are other formulas which are equivalent to this formula. Expectation of x minus mean whole square is the original definition of the variance. There may be other formulas, that is expectation of x whole square minus expectation of x square. Something like that is there. Is there any other questions? See, in the data analysis, there are two types of data analysis is there. Descriptive data analysis and predictive data analysis. Predictive means you want to predict something. Given the data, you want to predict the cause. This is roughly I am saying. Okay. Descriptive means you want to describe the data. Data might be having too big, that is 100 attributes are there, 1000 attributes are there, but you want to summarize the data. How is that you are going to summarize the data? That is how you are going to describe the data. Okay. That can be achieved by PCA and all these things actually. PCA and SVD, all these things. Summarization can be in effect achieved by PCA and all these things. And predictive analysis in effect can be achieved by probability theory by using the Bayes theory. Bayes theory is very important if you are trying to do the reverse engineering. From the data you are trying to estimate the cost, then base theory will be very handy. See, all these things are not mysterious actually. People may think that it is mysterious. It's not mysterious. Only thing is that one should know the vocabulary. One should read the textbooks basically. Okay. Nothing mysterious actually. Okay. Anything do you like to ask me? See, nowadays there is a lot of material available in the internet. You can listen to a professor from Stanford, a professor from MIT, a professor from Harvard. Video lectures are available almost for all courses. Big professors video lectures are available, and material is also available. PDFs are there. There's no need to buy books also nowadays. You can do your work actually. It's not like some 10 days back. Now it is very good actually for academic people. Doing research is straightforward. One can learn all these things. One can learn. For the linear algebra, Gilbert Strang videos are there. Gilbert Strang video lectures are there. You can see that one. I think some of you might be knowing this one. He is a professor of MIT. For linear algebra. You do the Google for this one. You search in the Google. You get video lectures. Excellent video lectures are there. Some 25, 30 video lectures only. You will clearly understand. Up to SVD, he will go. For probability theory also, MIT open courseware is there. Stanford video lectures are there. See, I am not underestimating our professors. What I am saying is world top class university professors videos are there. Sometimes NPTEL videos are very good actually. Okay. So in this lecture, I gave a rough outlook only, that's all. In tomorrow's lecture, we will go into the supervised learning. I will try to make that one more interesting, more informative. Okay. So with this, let me close this lecture for today. Madam? Professor Sobha
Sir,
Madam?
yes, sir. Sir, if the participants do not have any doubts or any clarifications, we'll wind up the session, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And tomorrow morning, we'll be having your session once again at 9:30, sir.
Okay, right.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. Right.
Thank you, sir. So participants will have a break for 10 minutes. After that, we'll be joining at 11:30.